a little College World Series. This is, I think, a big moment in the College World Series sort of atmosphere. I'm joined now by BeardVet's own Sean George. I've got senior MLB and NHL and college basketball contributor Dan Angell, as well as
you can just say not NBA at this point, Jack.
Yeah, really. Everything but the NBA, Dan Angell, and then America's Sheriff, David Clarke, here to talk some College World Series and some other stuff with me today. Now, Sean, I want to start with you because, as I understand it, you're at Omaha, and you, I would imagine, were in the stadium for this incredible LSU Wake Forest game. So, if you could just take us through the energy. I mean, some are calling that, one of the best College World Series games we've ever seen. What was it like being there?
Yeah, it was probably I put it in my top 5 College World Series games of all time. I've been going since I was a kid. And it was just an instant classic. I mean, it was just a solid pitching duel, defensive duel, until the great walk-off homer in the 11th by LSU to bring it out. And I'll be honest, like the fans in Omaha, I mean, they love the LSU Tigers. Their fan base represents every time they ever make it to the College World Series. There's some sort of connection there with the locals and all the LSU fans. And the television doesn't probably give you that vibe because they drowned out the sound. But I'm telling you that stadium was absolutely rocking. And especially when that homer went out of the building there, you couldn't hear anything except screaming. I mean, it was crazy. It was, and I was looking at, like, I was up in the skybox. I was fortunate enough to be up there, which was great. But at the end of the game, I wanted to be down. I wanted to be outside because that's where the party was happening. So, but anyways, it was a great game. I was fortunate enough. That was only the second game I was able to attend so far this year. I went on Monday for a little bit, the early game on Monday, but the Thursday night game, I was lucky enough to get the tickets for that and go. So I'm excited for what happens tonight.
So, I mean, the thing about LSU fans, and this is just true. I mean, I went to Ole Miss. I've lived in New Orleans, so I'm down in that area a lot. They're just rabid. I mean, it doesn't matter what the sport is. It doesn't matter if it's gymnastics, tennis. I mean, they just love LSU sports, and that's true of a lot of college fan bases. But it always hits a little different when you're the LSU Tigers and you're playing them. I mean, I've been to Baton Rouge. I've seen them play at Oxford and at Ole Miss 100 times. It's just they're an incredible fan base. I mean, there's the whole story about them blowing everybody out of the water with this Jello shot situation where some sort of, so there's the College World Series and then there's the Jello shot competition, and LSU won the Jello shot competition by like 20,000 shots, which doesn't surprise me at all. So I was happy to see that. Now, Dan, one thing I want to kind of ask you from just an analysis standpoint is everybody's taken with LSU. That stadium's going to be rocking full of LSU fans. They always show out, but they burned one of their best pitcher. He threw 140 pitches on Thursday.
Yeah.
And Florida has won 3 straight 1-run games, this is only like the 3rd time this has happened in the College World Series, and it hasn't happened since the 70s. So it's not like Florida is a pushover here. What do you see in terms of this 3-game series?
Yeah, and it's also not like Florida was dominating, because that first game, Florida, quite honestly, and my cousin is going to hate me bringing this up, but Florida quite honestly should have lost that game to Virginia. And that was only a case of the Cavaliers mismanaging the situation and Florida getting the job done in the bottom of the 9th. But I think Florida has got to be going into this thinking they've got to get this done in 2 games, because if this gets to a 3rd game, there's always the possibility that Skeens could come back for a couple innings, and that is the absolute last thing that you need to see if you're the Gators, because beyond Skeens, LSU's pitching is good but not great, and Florida has a really solid rotation. I mean, Hurston Waldrop is going to go in the 2nd game, most likely. Brandon Sprode will probably go tonight. That gives Florida a huge edge for the first 2 games. But they've got to get this done before that, because if LSU is able to get a split out of this, and even the possibility of facing Skeens in the 3rd game is just a terrifying prospect for any lineup. And LSU certainly has the hitters to make this happen. I mean, Dylan Cruz is leading the nation in batting average. Tommy White's ranked 2nd in RBIs. White was, of course, the guy who hit the home run against Wake Forest to get them here. So LSU's got the bats to do this. The problem there is the park has played long all week, which was one of the things that really hurt Wake Forest, because Wake Forest is a homer-heavy team. They're also an excellent pitching team, which is why they were the number 1 overall seed. But the Demon Deacons ballpark is one that plays very short. Omaha isn't doing that at all. So Florida's pitchers have to use that to their advantage and try and keep LSU's big hitters in the ballpark the same way Wake Forest did. If they do that, I think the Gators can get this done in 2 games.
Sheriff Clarke, you all over the Gators here, or you like LSU?
Did you ask Sheriff Clarke or me?
Sheriff,
I did.
Sheriff, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry, I said I'm going to be honest, as I always am. I've been watching the scores and some of the highlights, but I don't have a team in this race, in this fight. I used to watch college baseball religiously when the Texas Longhorns were always near the top and always playing for the College World Series title. So since they've been down the last couple of years, I just look at the scores. So I don't really have a pick here. I've been watching.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that's fine. We always like to hear Sheriff Clarke's opinion on all this stuff. We're going to talk basketball here in a little bit, which I know you got some thoughts on. So, Sean, let's get to your pick in a minute. But considering you are kind of an old hat, you spend a lot of time at the College World Series, my question here is, like, the SEC seems to be in a mode where they've been dominating. I mean, Ole Miss last year, like Mississippi State in 2021, LSU and Florida now. It's not like the ACC are slouches. I mean, that's where some of the best baseball is. Some of these other conferences are also very strong. What is it about the SEC when they get to Omaha that makes these teams so special?
You know, honestly, I believe it's just that early start, you know, in the better weather. It's got to play a factor into this, because you look at the Big Ten schools, like there's some good ball being played in late May. It's just they never really have great teams that have it all together by the time the College World Series is going on. And all these Southern teams, I believe, this is my general take on this. But I just think those Southern teams, just with the weather and how they're able to play pretty much year-round baseball compared to the Northern teams. Now, I will say this: these kids go to all the leagues and the summer leagues and all that in the off seasons and everything nowadays. But I think that has to play into it. I mean, you've only seen, I think, one team in the past 5 or 6 years outside of the SEC that's won it. I think that was the Beavers a few years back. And then, you know, you've seen the occasional, you know, we had Indiana have a good team a couple years ago. We've had Texas, as the sheriff has said, you know, Texas with Augie when he was around, Augie Brito. You know, there's been some good teams, but they've just never, the SEC is just very strong right now, all around too. It's pitching, it's batting, you know, and their fans. They bring a big fan base to all these games. all these teams, whether it's Georgia or Florida or even the Virginia schools. They all have great fan bases that do travel and want to come to Omaha for this. So that's kind of my take a little bit on it. But again, it is very exciting to have LSU in the finals. It's been a long time. As a matter of fact, I can't even remember the last time LSU made it. It might have been back in the 90s to where they made it into the finals, if I remember right, possibly mid 90s. But
yeah, they've always been good. Now I know
2017 was the last time LSU made the finals.
Right. That was when Alex Bregman was there.
And they actually faced Florida.
Yeah, that's right. So kind of a rematch, and that's the thing, Dan. So like, is the SEC? Is it the fan base? I mean, what is it about? Because it's not like, I mean, look, Oral Roberts, Virginia. I mean, a lot of really good baseball teams, but it seems like lately when these teams get to Omaha, the SEC just seems to be dominating. Not all the time, but a lot of the times. Is it just because the fan base travels, or I mean, what do you think it is, Dan?
No, I think it's because top to bottom, every team in the SEC believes that they can compete, and they know that in this conference, if you don't, you're basically instant roadkill. I mean, you look at SEC football compared to this, and we all get the hype every fall about how strong the SEC is in football, but in reality, it's usually just 2 or 3 big teams. It's always Alabama, Georgia, and occasionally LSU or somebody else sneaks in there. But in baseball, I mean, you look at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is an afterthought in football. In baseball, they're a national power.
Right.
And it goes the whole way down the conference. There are no bad teams in this league, in large part because it's not a money sport. It's a much smaller roster than football. So it's a lot easier for a well-funded school, which all of these schools are, that has good fan support, again, true for all SEC schools, to pump a little bit of money into the baseball program, get a few talented pitchers and a few talented hitters, build a solid team, and then you're competing with top quality programs all season long. Iron sharpens iron. And these teams come to Omaha having been toughened up by the meat grinder of 2 to 3 months of nothing but SEC competition.
If you listen to my father on like Monday through Friday, I'm sure that anyone listening knows that my brother is a really strong pitcher and is committed to pitch at West Virginia. And one thing that I'll just say, based on talking to him when the recruiting was happening and the way he feels about some of the different schools, is like the SEC is like the creme de la creme. I mean, that's just he's one of the most confident pitchers I've ever seen. And even he would be like, I don't know, like, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Florida. I don't know if I'm good enough to play there. Now, of course, he feels like he can compete with anybody. He's an incredible pitcher, but those schools have such a reputation in baseball right now for just being absolute powerhouses in a way that, like, you're right, Dan. In football, I mean, it's cliche to talk about SEC, and I mean, that's just kind of how it is. But in baseball, there's such a difference between, I mean, when Mississippi State and Ole Miss are winning national championships and Vanderbilt, then, I mean, the conference runs deep. So Sean, I imagine you'll be at these next 3 games. Just give us your pick for who you think is going to come out on top, just who's going to bring home the trophy.
So a little bit to what Dan was saying there earlier. Florida probably has the best opportunity for tonight's game. Going into game 2, though, I think if LSU can win game 2, I think you're going to be set up for maybe one of the greatest matchups in a Monday night championship game in quite some time, with all the strong bats and all the strong pitching. And if LSU can get that time off to get their go-getter to get in the game Monday, you're going to see a pretty exciting game. And I will say if the wind is coming out of the west, the bats can hit big in that ballpark. It's just here lately that we've had north winds, and north winds typically knock down the ball and doesn't makes for kind of more defensive baseball. But having said all that, I mean, I'm rooting for LSU because I just like to have a good time. The inside baseball, though, probably the play is on Florida, especially tonight. But there's no hotter hitters in the country right now than LSU. They are hot and they're fired up. So
yeah, they are. So I heart with LSU, maybe head with Florida. Dan, just for tonight's game, anything in the betting perspective that you like?
I mean, I got to go with Florida here. I mean, the Gators are rested. LSU not only spent Dom Skeens, but had to go through an emotionally draining game of 11 innings against probably the best team in the country in Wake Forest. And now they've got to turn around and play the number 2 team in the country in Florida, which also isn't a matchup that the SEC could give us all season. So these teams are actually facing each other for the first time, which says a lot about how ridiculously deep this conference is, that these two teams never once saw each other, and both teams still went through an absolute meat grinder of a schedule. So LSU has no reference point for knowing that, hey, we can beat these guys. They're going in cold. It's just another team, even though it's a conference game. And I don't think that bodes well for the Tigers. I think Florida is the pick here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. The one thing I kind of like Florida tonight minus 1.5 runs at plus 145. And the reason is because so LSU plus 1.5 is minus 180. And that juice has to be because of these 3 one-run games. So you think, oh, well, another 1-run game, LSU, but minus 180 is like ridiculous for a run line. So the idea to get plus 145 on a minus 1.5, just laying 1.5 runs for a team that is gassed, and Florida can hit as well. They got good pitching. The reason they win these 1-run games is because they have an incredible rotation, as Dan was saying earlier. So, we'll see. That's kind of the way I see it. But I think this game probably goes to Monday, and then you're going to all have to stay up late to watch what could be one of the best finales to the College World Series. And one of the only ways that I can stay up late, Sean, is with BeardVet coffee. Me and my dad, we talk about BeardVet coffee all the time. We love it so much. I love it for a couple of reasons. 1, it's veteran owned and operated. 2, I get the whole bean. I think that the only thing I look for when it comes to whole bean coffee is the oil. This is some of the oiliest coffee you can get, which makes it better tasting. And 3, and I've said this before, Sean, you guys do such an incredible job with logistics. If you wanted to start just a logistics company, I'd be all in. I'd be your first investor, because the minute I order this coffee, it's like it shows up. It's like quicker than Amazon. I mean, it shows up immediately. It's at my doorstep. And then I've got more coffee, and I can't live without it. My dad's the same way. He drinks about 6 to 7 cups before he hit noon. And if you've ever talked to him on the phone, you can tell that he is 100% powered by BeardVet coffee. So we want to thank Sean as always. I don't know, Sean, you want to say a little bit about BeardVet?
Oh, I'll give you the last little tidbit of inside baseball for tonight's game. So, and I just want to throw this out there. Listen, we're going to have some storms today, some bad storms during the regular day. And when these storms pass by early afternoon, it's going to be windy, and the wind will be coming out of the west. So you could see there could be some homers in this game, realistically. So just saying that, just so weather plays an important part in baseball. And anyways, but yeah, no, thank you for the kind words there. We do our best. We try our best to get everything out as fast as possible. Usually we're about a 16-hour turnaround, I think, is where we're sitting at last to check. So, but yeah, we've got a lot of exciting things coming up. We'll be in Nashville in a couple weeks. I'll be down in West Palm Beach at Mar-a-Lago next month, also with TP Action, which is a new super PAC that we're doing some stuff with. Anyways, and we're giving away, and we gave away a golf cart. So we gave away a golf cart.
Wow.
All the money. The money was donated to charity, to a Heart of a Lion, John Daly, the Golfers Foundation. We donated over $5,000 to his charity, and yeah, the guy who won it lives down in Florida, so I'm going to be delivering it to him here in a couple weeks.
That's awesome. I'm glad you mentioned golf, because I have, I play a lot of golf, and I play with a Marine Corps veteran, and I started bringing him BeardVet coffee on the golf course. So now I'm known at my club as the guy who hands out coffee while playing golf in the hot sun. So we want to always thank Sean George for partnering with us. You can go to beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla. That's Godzilla. And you can get 10% off all of your coffee needs, as well as all of your beard needs. So we want to thank Sean, as always, for partnering with us and joining us. Sean, have a great
you guys too
time at the College World Series. This should be
I'm gonna go get some of my Rocco shots tonight, so, to add to that LSU record total of shots that they've done. I think they're close to 30,000 or something like that. The most shared story of the College World Series is not one of the greatest games on Thursday, but the fact that LSU can absolutely put down Jello shots, which, if you've ever been to Baton Rouge, I swear to you, that was not a surprise at all. I have seen those guys in action, and it's frightening. I mean, the amount that they can drink is pretty frightening. So, all right.
Thanks again, Sean.
Yeah. Later, gents. Have a great one.